Right. If there was an option, I wish there were an option to rent a Torah and marry the young one. If you had an option between an old one and a young one, but there's no such option.
Yep. Okay, we begin today's daf. It's probably the most fascinating daf in all of in memorable daf, I should say, in Yevamos. Daf Samach Gimel. We're holding daf Samach Beis Amud Beis. 3 lines from where the lines get wider. Amar Rab Tanchon Amar Chanina. Now here it's fascinating that we're dealing with Masechta Yevamos, and here the Gemara goes on and talks about the benefits of being married. And I was thinking about that. You would think that it belongs in another Masechta like Kedushin or Ksubis. The reason is because by Yevamos, the marriage is forced upon you. So often it's like you may not be happy with such a marriage. And then the Gemara goes on, no matter how bad a marriage is, the Gemara is going to discuss it's still better than remaining single as best as you can. And the Gemara even describes how Tanoim and Amoraim didn't have good marriages. So let's read. Amar Rab Tanchon Amar Chaniloi Kol Odam. Rab Tanchon said in the name of Chaniloi, any person she'ein lo isha that does not have a wife, sharud beloy simcha. You should know he's living without any happiness. He has no happiness in his life. Beloy bracha, he has no bracha. Beloy tova, without seeing the good. In other words, bracha means he doesn't see any blessing in his life, and he doesn't see positive thing, how good his life is. Anybody who's without a wife. So the Gemara, like the Rosh Hashanah, so simcha, bracha, and tov is Shvat. That's why people get married in month of Shvat. Anyway, b'loi simcha the v'samachta achta b'veisecha. The Torah says that you should be happy with your house, which means you can have joy eating ma'aseh sheni only if you're eating it with your wife. Beisecha is your wife. Below bracha, the pasuk says l'niach bracha el beisecha. The Torah says that bracha is placed el beisecha because of your bias, because of your wife. Below toiva, if you don't have a wife, it's not good. You don't see good. It's not good for a person to be alone. So those are the 3 things that if you don't have marriage, it's simcha, bracha, and toiva. The Marava Amri in Eretz Yisrael they said if you're without a wife, below Torah, you don't have real good learning. In other words, you could be a big Talmud Chacham, but if you're not married, the Torah is not in depth. You're missing that Torah. And it's interesting. That's the reason why, by the way, the minig is that the chassan, when you're a chassan, you say a dvar Torah, and the boys try to interrupt you so you don't finish your speech. Why do they do that? It's because precisely this Gemara. Because the Gemara is saying that the Torah that you learn as a single person is not really the Torah. It's only after you're married, that's when you really have learning. Below Torah, below Chama. And whoever is without a wife is without a wall, without any protection. Below Torah, diksiv, mein as rasi bi. If I don't have my wife, who's my ezer kenegdai, my helper, v'sushia nitcha mimenu. Wisdom is pushed away from me. Below chayme, without a wife, it's without a wall. Diksiv, you have no protection. Nekeva to soivav gava. The female surrounds the male. That's also why by a chasana, the woman goes around the man 7 times because she's representing that she is his protection. So Rava Bar Ula says below shalom. Whoever is without marriage is without shalom. And I would like to interpret shalom as self-esteem. Loy shein, I always say that shalom means you have a name. So a person without marriage is missing that peace, that inner peace of self-esteem. The pasuk says, "V'yidata ki shalom ohalecha." You will know that you have peace in your tent. Ufakata navecha, you'll visit your home. V'loitechta, and you will not sin or not be missing anything. So that's a reference that when you busy with your home, with your wife, you have inner peace along with that. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi darshans from that pasuk. We brought this pasuk v'yidata ki shalom ohalecha. He says interesting things. Kol hayadeya be'ishtoi sheyira shemayim. If you know that your wife is a yira shemayim, and she wants to cohabitate with you, but she's generally a person that's shy. Let's call her shy, and she's not going to ask outright that she wants to do it. So if you know that your wife is Yira Shemayim, be'eina poikta, and you don't cohabitate with her at the moment, at the time that you're supposed to, Nikrechaita, you're a big sinner, not paying it, your antenna is not up, paying attention to what her needs are. Shnema v'yidatu kishalom oyalecha ufakakta nebecha v'leitechta, and you will not sin. So you have to make sure to cohabitate with your bias, with your home, with your wife at the right time. Otherwise, you're considered a sinner. V'amar b'shuva levi, b'shuva says another halacha. Before a person goes on a trip, a long trip, a person should visit his wife, so to speak, at the time he's going out on a trip. So he has a pasuk before you make sure that your home is intact, and then visit your wife. So we see that when you're going out on a trip, you're supposed to visit your wife. Is it from that pasuk? We learn it from another pasuk. The curse to a woman is that she's always fantasizing for her husband, and that's a most appropriate time when a husband should be with his wife. So it's another pasuk that says that, and especially when you're going on a trip where your wife longs for you, you have to be with her. That a woman longs for her husband at the time that he's going out on a trip. So why do I need two psukim to teach you the same idea? Rav Yosef, the second pasuk was teaching you, the first pasuk of Yidatek Yishalom Alecha is teaching you ala somach levista, very close to her menstruation cycle. In other words, at the time that she's supposed to be a nidab, let's say she always becomes a nida during the daytime, you're not allowed to have relations with her during the daytime. If it's at night, you have to have the whole night not to have relations with her, if that's her time. But if you're going on a trip, that law is suspended. The kama, what is called samach levista, what is called the period of time that you're supposed to abstain for your wife under normal circumstances, a 12-hour period. So again, if a woman sees 8 o'clock at night, every time that's when her time period is. So then throughout the night, that whole 12-hour period, you're not allowed to have relations with her because that's called under normal circumstances. But if you're going on a trip, as long as she didn't become a nida yet, you're supposed to be with her. Bahani Mili, when was it said that you're supposed to be with your wife before leaving to a trip? The Dvar Horshus, if you're going for Dvar Horshus, something that's not a mitzvah. For business, aval dvar mitzvah. But if you're going for a mitzvah, mitridi, you're going to become busy into being with your wife, and therefore you're exempt from the rule of being with your wife. You should be busy focusing on your trip. Tanu Rabbanan. Here the Gemara is teaching you what makes a good life, basically. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, ha'oyev is ishtoi kegufoi. The recipe for a good life is to love your wife as much as you love yourself. Okay. You can't love her more than yourself, but to love her as much as you like your own self. And that means you self-forgive, basically, just like everybody is always forgiving themselves quickly. You can forgive your wife also as quickly. And then, but to honor her, right, buy her nice clothing, you should buy it, which should cost you more than what you spend for yourself. And then, if you guide your children, your boys and girls, b'derech yeshara, in the balanced way. In other words, you keep them balanced, not to the extremes. You lead them that way. And Bahamasian, Somach Lepirkan, and you marry them off very close to their maturity. What that means is it used to be from 13, 18, whatever it is, you try to marry them very young. And that's the recipe of a good life. And we said, and this is all rumors of those three things that of loving your wife, respecting her, guiding your children, and marrying them off early. Now the Gemara says, "Ha'oyev es shchenav," somebody who loves his neighbors. Ma'amakarev es kroivav, and he's very close with his relatives. Certain people, after they hit it big, they don't show up to family weddings, to family simchas, because they're too busy. But a good person is somebody who loves his neighbors and is very close to his family. They say about Rab Chaim Kanievsky that as famous as he was, he never missed a family simcha. That took precedence over everything. So someone who marries his niece, his daughter of a sister, fascinating thing. That's a good thing to marry. We don't do that because there's Rabbi Yehuda Chassid said not to do that. But from the Gemara, it says you should do that. It's a good thing. And why is that? So Rashi says, because a person has strong feelings to his sister. And if he marries his sister's daughter, he's going to really respect his wife. He'll have a good marriage. So that's what the Gemara says. Now we go to Samachim Lamed Aleph. If you lend a poor person in a time of need, not that when you give him the money, he now disqualifies for all the free government programs. No, you lend him at the right moment. Even though when you lend the money to a poor person, you're always concerned you're not going to get the money back. So if a person who does all these things, all about Kosovayim, the pasuk says like this. The beginning of the pasuk Rashi brings, if you kisira aram b'ksusai, that means you take care of the poor. Salam, that means you're good to your neighbors and relatives. And you marry your niece. Us, the pasuk continues in Yeshaya, Tikra, you will be able to daven, Hashem Yana, Hashem will always answer you. Tishaveya, you will be able to cry out, and God will say, so to speak, B'yoyma hineni, here I am. So that's a recipe for being very close to God. New Gemara, and the Gemara is a bunch of ideas about marriage and statements of Rabbi Lazar. Amar Rabbi Lazar said, Kol Adam she'ein le'isha, any human being or any person, a Jew that's not married, eina Adam, he's not considered a human being. He's not considered an Adam. Shnema zochon akeva baram v'ikra shmam Adam. So I don't know what he's teaching you over here, but the Torah says that only after God created a man and woman, then he called his name Adam. So as long as there's one person, you're not considered Adam. Not sure what that means. He's not an Adam. But the Rabbi Lazar says, "Kol Adam she'ein lo karka." I think it means something like this. Let's read the next Gemara. Gemara says a person that doesn't dive into real estate. He doesn't buy a piece of property to live on, right? He's always renting. He's always afraid the mortgages are too high, the prices are too high, so he can't take, as they say in the trade, the plunge. Eina Adam. He's not a person. Shnema, Hashemayim Shemaim Hashem, the sound of Bnei Adam. God gave the heavens to God, and the earth he gave to people. So you're not a person if you don't own a piece of planet Earth. What that means is like this. Usually the same person that has anxiety to get married is the same person that's going to have anxiety to buy a piece of land. So you're not an Adam. An Adam is this person who takes risks, and that's called an Adam. And if you want to be called an Adam, you take a risk and get married, and you take a risk and you buy the land, and whatever happens, happens. There's no guarantees on anything. Rabbi Lazar goes on further. There are no guarantees. Why does the pasuk say when God created Chava, God says, I'm going to make Ezer, a helper, Kenegdai, that's going to be opposing. So that's two different things. Somebody who's helping you is not opposing you. Somebody who's opposing you is not a help to you. So really it's mazel. Zocha, it depends what your mazel. If you merit, Izarte, she's a type of woman that is assisting you. Loi zocha, but if you don't have that merit, Kenegdai, she opposes you. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Sometimes, a shleifidig guy, sleepy person, needs a woman that wakes him up a little bit, that fires him up, his latent talent. So it depends what your mazel is. Other says he goes much further than that. Rab Lazar Rami ksiv kinagdoi. He said it says the word opposing him, but karinin kinegdoi, opposing him. Kinagdoi means she whips him. Zocha, if you're lucky, kinegdoi, she is opposing you. But loy zocha, if you're not lucky, not only does she oppose you, but menagdesoy, she actually whips you. So there's some strong women that they wouldn't take this from their husband. And that, again, that could be up to mazel. It's not a bad thing. Ashkeche Rabbi Yossi Elio. Rabbi Yossi met Eliohan Navi. Amalei, and so Rabbi Yossi asked him a question. I don't understand this question, but anyway, Ksiv, it says, as Eloi Ezer. God says, I'm going to make a helper for Adam. The me isha izartel Adam. How does a woman help a man? So Elio and Navi, what do you mean? In other words, I guess Rabbi Yossi is asking, why should I get married? So Amalei, so Rabbi Elio told him, Adam mevichitim. A man brings home wheat to his house. You can't eat chit and kaisis. Can you chew on wheat and eat it? Somebody needs to prepare it. Pishton, you bring home flax. Pishton leivish, are you going to wear flax? Somebody has to make it into proper clothing. So now you don't find that what a woman does, mi'ira einov, lightens your eyes because she helps you have food. Umamida al raglav, and helps you stand on your feet by providing you and preparing for you good clothing. So like they used to say in the Heim, there's a woman should be KKK, Kinder Kochen Cleanen. But I don't know, that's what it seems to see in this Gemara. V'amar Rab Lazar. Rab Lazar said, "My diksiv." Why does it say in the pasuk? Is when Adam saw Chava for the first time, he said, "Zoisapam." This time, etzem atzamai. This is a bone from my bones. Ubasar. This is a flesh. Mipsari, from my flesh. Malami. This teaches us. Why did he say Zoisapam this time? What this time? Malami. From this you shouldn't read literally, but Shaba Adam al Kol Behema. In Adam's mind, he cohabitated with any animal, not literally, but in his mental mind, the chaya, and every wild animal. And somehow he couldn't find coolness of his mind ad Shaba al Chava, until he came to Chava. So he really had the longest dating career that anybody could have possibly had, because he dated every single animal and wild animal, and he still didn't find his shidduch until God made this chava. To tell you that it's not easy, and you have to pray for it. Another statement, V'am Rab Lazar. Rab Lazar said, "My diksiv." Why does it say in the pasuk, "V'nivrechu l'chol kol mishpachos Adama"? By Avram Avinu, it says that everybody will be blessed through you. The way Rashi learns in Chumash, that everybody, every goy, all the families that are living on earth, are going to say that let my children be like Avraham Avinu. But v'nivrechu is an odd word, which can also mean grafting. Brecha is something like a graft in planting. Amalehak, and what Rab Loza is trying to say is that the Jewish people don't have it all. We need to graft from goyim, and we'll see. Amalehak Kadosh Baruch Hu Avraham. Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Avraham Avinu that shtei brechas toivish yesh li lahavrich b'cha. I have two grafting branches. I have to graft within the Jewish people. That means there's going to be two great non-Jews that are going to join the Jewish people. They're going to be very important to the Jewish people. Rus Hamoy Aviyah, Rus the Moabite. So she's the grandmother of David HaMelech. The whole David lineage and the kingdom of Mashiach comes from Rus. V'Nama Ha'amoinis. Nama from Ammon. She was married to Shlomo. And they have a bunch of beautiful kings coming from her tzaddikim, Chizkiyahu, Shaphat, Asa, and the Navi Yeshaya all come from, and Rechavam all come from Nama. So that's what it means that the Nivruchu, it'll be grafting to you, Kol Mishpachos Adama. What does it mean, all families of the earth? All families, earth. Which family lives in the earth? We live on the earth. Afilu mishpachos, even if there's a family, a group of people, hadoros ba'adama, that live in the ground. In other words, let's say there's some cavemen living in the ground. Ein misbarchas el b'shvi Yisrael. They don't see blessing only because of the Jewish people. You'd think they have nothing to do with Jews. They're living in Iceland somewhere, and they have nothing to do with Jews. Their whole blessing in the world comes because of Jewish people. Kol goy haaretz, all the nations of the earth. Even a ship that comes from Megalia to Aspania, and it comes with, and that's how technology developed through trade, right? All those ships that came and were successful, they don't see blessing el b'shvil Yisrael. There's somehow a Jew involved, and that's how they see blessing. So it shows you how important the Jewish people are to the world. V'yama Rab Lazar. Rab Lazar says, "Asidin kol bali umaniyos shiamdu al hakarka." Here he talks about something interesting. There's going to be a destruction in the future world, and anybody who had important jobs, either they're going to give up their important job. Let's say they're a computer programmer, and they're going to become farmers. Shiamdu al hakarka. Somehow they're going to go and work on the land, on karka. Maybe there's going to be hunger at that time. For some reason, everybody's going to give up their job and work for the land. Shenema, v'yardu ma'aniyasem, they're going to come down from their ships. Kol taifsei masoit malachim kol chayvlei hayam. Those that have, row the boat, and all those that, tie the sails. Anybody who works on the ship, al ha'aretz yamoidu, they're going to stand on land. For some reason, they're going to give up this important work just to work the ground. But Rab Lazar said, there's nothing worse. There's nothing that the lowest type of job. In other words, the most satisfying as far as financial. There's nothing more unsatisfying than working, being a farmer. Shenama v'yardu, they're going down. They were high tech people, pilots and captains on a ship, and then now they're going to be farmers. The Gemara says the fascinating thing, and here it talks about what type of profession should Jews be involved in. So what the Gemara is going to say is that a Jewish person should not, although it's nice to be able to be a farmer, a Jewish person is better off in business. So Rabbi Lazar Chazia, the Gemara says, Rabbi Lazar Chazia lehi ara the shidebe krava lepusya. He saw that they were plowing this land. The farmers were plowing the land to the width. If you're going to plow it to the length, so you're going to try to make this land produce better. It's better off for you to be in business. It's better for you. You'll make more money. Rav was walking amongst the stalks. He saw that they were blowing, that they were, full. Even if you blow and continue to blow and show me how great it is, it's so nice to be walking in the fields. It's better to be turning around things in business. Buy low, sell high. Rava says, if you have 100 zuz, bi'iski in business, you're investing it, right? Kol yomi, then every day, bisra b'chama, you'll be able to enjoy meat and wine because there's more profit, the higher profit margin. But you take 100 zuz and you're just a farmer with it. Milcha, you have salt, the chafura, and vegetables. In other words, you're not going to be able to afford the luxuries of life. Not only that, farming is a type of business element that you're always concerned that somebody's trying to steal something from you, and you're always having a lawsuit with other people. It's contentious type of business. You're going to be sleeping on the ground because you're afraid somebody's going to steal something from you. And you're always fighting with people trying to take something from you. So basically, I guess what they're trying to say is that there are certain types of business. I can't, maybe owning a car service or something like that, maybe that the profit margins are small and it's hard work. It's very stressful. And you're always fighting with people. You try to go into business. Don't be afraid. Again, this is all part of the Gemara, I guess, that's trying to encourage people to take risks, get married, buy real estate, go into business, and get out there. But I guess in those times, taking a job in the farmer was more secure. That's why people did it. It's like taking a job in motor vehicles. But that's not the Jewish way. You have to try to work in different ways. Amar Papa said, Zara v'lai tizbein. So here Papa said, better to eat home cooked foods. Now Zara, plant, v'lai tizbein, don't buy food from the store. Even though they taste the same, the food that you plant and the organic foods that you eat are much more a blessing. There's much more to it. There's much more healthier to it. Zabain. Now, if you're forced, if you're forced to sell your possessions on eBay, sell it. V'loi tezel. Just make don't sell it so that you become poor. You have to get rid of possessions that you don't need. Sell the Bentley. Hani mili bistarki, that sell things that are like kalim, things that you don't use. Avaglima, your suits, the things that give you honor that you wear, that you don't sell. Because once you sell something that you wear and you use all the time that gives you a feeling of worth, don't sell that, because then you're losing the inner good feeling that you need to have to be able to make, rise again. Now he tells you something about construction. If you have a hole, try to fill it up right away. Don't try to widen it and fill it up with plaster. But if you have to do that, don't knock the wall down, because as soon as you get into a building construction, mismasken, you automatically become poor, because whatever you price out in construction, that's the rule. General rule is double it. Kafites, now he says like this. Rav Papa is continuing. And Rav Papa was a rich man, the Gemara says. He says, Kapoich, jump into Zabein Ara to buy a piece of land. Because you jump into it, it'll work out. You'll figure out how you make it work. You'll divide it up, rent this, rent that, and you'll make it work. Misun, but be patient, decide before you marry a woman. Because once you make a mistake, it's hard to get out of that one. Neches, there he tells you how to marry. Neches darga nesev itzisa. Go down a step and marry a woman. In other words, don't marry a woman in your class or league. Go down one notch, because if you marry a person in your league or higher than you, it's harder for her to respect you. So it's better to marry somebody who's just like a notch or two lower than you. But the opposite is when it comes to a friend, try to befriend somebody who's in a higher league than you. Sak darga b'char sheshvina. Go up a step to try to make a friend over there. Live in a classy neighborhood, because, you learn from classy people. Zog the Gemara, Amar Ablazer Baravina. Ein Puranis Baila Oilam Ela B'Shvi Yisrael. Bad things don't happen to the world only because the Jewish people should learn something from it. So the whole thing that's going on in Ukraine is a rebuke to the Jewish people to learn a lesson. God says, I destroyed by the Goyim their cities and their streets. Uksiv, and then the pasuk says, Amarti, I said, says God, Ach tiri, I see, you should see me. Tikchi musar, you'll learn a lesson from that. So that's when you see something that happened in the world, you have to know that the Jewish people are supposed to learn a lesson from that. Rav, now the Gemara says, goes back now to actually the new Gemara, and the Gemara goes back to the previous theme of talking about marriage. Rav was departing from Rabbi Chia, his rabbi, at the end of the semester. Amalei, so Rabbi Chia told him, God should save you from something that's more difficult than death. So the Gemara asked, what is more difficult than death? Death is the final blow. He found a pasuk and he said, this is what my Rebbe meant. He told me, be careful who you're going to marry, because the pasuk says, in Koheles, I find something more bitter than death as a Isha, the woman. So therefore he warned him, be careful who you're going to marry. Rav Havakumatsar, but he didn't take the lesson to heart, because he married wrong, I don't know. He married a difficult wife. Rav Havakumatsar lay the base. His wife used to taunt him and cause him a lot of problems. When he told his wife, make me peas, P-E-A-S, she would make him lentils. Chimse, she told him, make me lentils. She made him peas. In other words, she always did the opposite of what he wanted. When Chia, Rav's son, grew up, he would turn it around. In other words, Rav would tell Chia, tell your mother to make me peas. So Rav, his son, knew that his father wanted peas, so he would tell his mother, make lentils. So she made peas. Dad wants lentils, so she made peas, and that's how he brought it to his father. So when he would bring exactly what he requested to his father, Amalei, so his father said to his son, your mother has gotten better because she's following directions. Amalei, so Rabbi Chia told him, I was the one that turned it around. In other words, she didn't get better. I'm just the one that I figured her out. So if I say the opposite, she'll make me what you wanted. Amalei. So Rav said, that's what people say. People who, your children that come from you, can teach you a thing or two. You could learn something from your kids. So he's like smiling, but saying that's not the right thing. Don't do that anymore. Because the pasuk says, in other words, when you train your tongue to speak falsely, so even though maybe technically you were allowed to speak falsely in order to get to be Mekayim Kibbutz, but nevertheless, the fact that you're habituating yourself to do that, that can lead to other bad things. So we don't follow that direction anymore. Then the Gemara says, I think Rabbi Chia, which is Rav's son, he also married not so good. His wife would always bother him. Nevertheless, he had a bad wife, a difficult marriage. When he finds something, he would go, let's say, to Tiffany or Hermes. He would he would wrap it up in a scarf. He would buy her always nice things, and bring it to her. So he was a very, very good husband. Amalei Rav. So Rav says, Rav, the father says, "Well, but she's difficult to you. Why are you doing all this?" Perhaps what he meant here is that since you're spoiling her, you're not helping the situation. So she doesn't. You shouldn't do that. Amalei, he said, "No, I'm still going to buy her beautiful things, even though she's not such a great person. Dayenu, it's enough. Shemegadlois banenu, that she raises our children. Umatzilas aisanu. We go to Amid Beis, Sabachim Amid Beis, Menachet. A woman that saves us from thinking about Avera, that's enough. Even though she doesn't have to work hard for us to protect us from Avera, nevertheless, that's enough for me to show gratitude that she's my wife, even though in other areas she's not so good." The Gemara continues. Makrile Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yitzchak Berei. Rabbi Yehuda was learning with Rabbi Yitzchak his son, and he came up to the pasuk, "Moitzi ani mar memavas l'shisha." I find more bitter than death the woman. Amalei. So Rabbi Yitzchak asked his dad, "Kagoy who's a woman that's bitter than death?" Kagoy imcha. He said, "Your mother's that way." So the Gemara says, "Wait a minute. Rabbi Yehuda had such a bad wife." Well, Masnei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yitzchak Berei. Rabbi Yehuda was teaching Rabbi Yitzchak his son, and he would say, a person doesn't find serenity only from his first wife. You could get married again, but it's not the same. Shenama, even though no matter what kind of contentious marriage you had, the serenity you still have is from your first wife. Shenama, your source was blessing, and you'll have happiness from the wife of your younger years. V'amalei, and Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kagoin mam. And who's an example of a good wife? Like your mother. So what was the wife of Rabbi Yehuda? Was she a difficult woman or not such a difficult woman? So the Gemara says, "Matkif kife." She would get angry very quickly. Beiburi ma'arba b'mila, but it was easy to console her. In other words, it was easy to calm her down. So it's difficult to deal with such a person, but yet, you can help things, you can move things along quickly. So she had both qualities in her. Now the Gemara says, the Gemara is going to say that if you have, the Gemara is now saying that you don't have to stay with a very difficult wife. That's impossible, because you have to make this, what you have to get rid of if you have a bad woman. And the Gemara is going to say that in a moment. But the first Gemara describes what is a bad woman. What is a bad woman? Amar Abaya said, she's a woman that will make you supper, but will curse you out with her mouth. So she just constantly berates you. So that's called a bad woman. And you can't stay with such a woman. Rava Amma, it's another thing. She makes you supper, and she turns her back to you. She ignores you. She's a career-minded person, and she's back with her business, and you can't communicate with her. Both are bad women. But sometimes the Gemara is going to say like this. First, the Gemara says, when a person marries, his averis, his sins are forgiven. When you find a good woman and you get married, your sins are are closeted away. That's the will of God. Now the Gemara says, B'marava that says, Kinasav ish so, when a man marries a woman, Amrle, they would tell him, let's say after the first year of marriage, what kind of woman did you get? Matzah or maitzi? Did you get the matzah or maitzi? What does that mean? Matzah, did you get a matzah woman? The pasuk says, matzah isha matzah taif. You find a woman, you found good. So, or did you find a maitzi? Maitzi means, I find that woman bitter than death, the woman. And that's in the present tense, because when you have a woman that's difficult, that every day is a bad day. It's always constantly present. A good woman is, you're not thinking so much about now. It's a matzah each, a matzah taif. So now this is Gemara says, we just got through saying, hey chidame ishara. So Amar Rava says, ishara, if you do happen to have an ishara, don't stay with it. Mitzvah legarsha, the mitzvah to divorce. Shnamar, Pasuk says, the Pasuk says, Garish lates, you have to get rid of somebody who's scorning, the Yetze Modain, and get rid of contention, the Yishboish din, the Kolin, and you'll abstain then from strife and shame. So sometimes a woman that you can't change and she's that way, there's a mitzvah to give her a divorce. But sometimes it's impossible to give her a divorce because there's so many other factors. There's children, there's the cost factor. So Rava said, Ishira uksubasa meruba. If you have a bad woman and it's too expensive to give her a divorce because there's a big ksuba. So the Gemara says, Sarasa b'tzida, then marry somebody else and let her be jealous of your co-wife. The Amri Inish bechaverta. People say that a woman will shape up when she sees her co-wife, not with a thorn. So a co-wife can do more than actually trying to fight her back. The Gemara says, Rava says, Kashi Ishira Kiyam Sangrir. A woman, a difficult woman, a bad woman is worse than a leaky, a rainy, windy, gloomy day. A rainy day. Shnama delef tired b'yoim. Continuous droppings of rain during the day, sagrir, the Eishes Midon Nishtava is compared to a contentious wife. That means that a person who has a constant rain and it rains inside his house, you think when you go home, you have, you can get away and leave everything, all the things that give you stress outside the house, and you come into your house and it's leaking into your house. That's what it's like to have a contentious wife. Ba'ama Rava. But Rabbi says, Boyere, come and see, Kama Toiva Isha Toiva, how good is a good wife, the Kama Ra Isha Ra, and how bad is a bad wife. Kama Toiva Isha Toiva, how good is a good wife, Diksiv, Motza Isha Motza Toiv. The Pasuk says, Motza Isha Motza Toiv. Find a woman, you found good. Iba Gavor Mishtoikra. If the Pasuk says Motza Toiv means you found a good person, Kama Toiva Isha Toiva, how good, goodness is defined by having a good wife. The Shakosam Mishapcha, that the Torah praises her. Is if the whole pasuk is an example that if you find a good woman and it's like finding Torah, so the Gemara is saying that the pasuk is even saying Kama toiva isha toiva sha Torah nimshulabah, that how good is to have a good wife, that when you want to compare, you want to tell somebody how good Torah is, you tell them it's like having a good wife. That's how good Torah is. So having a good wife is the ultimate blessing that a person can have in his life. That when the pasuk wants to say how good Torah is, the Torah is telling you that the pasuk is telling you that having a good wife, learning Torah is having like a great wife. Kamara Ishra, how bad it is to have a bad wife. The Ksiv Moitzani Amar Mamavis Eso Isha. Iba Gavo B'Shtoikra. If the pasuk is talking about her, Kamara Ishra. Shakasu Magana, that the pasuk is telling you how bad it is to have a bad wife, that the pasuk says that that better than death is having a bad wife. But maybe the pasuk is saying, I'm finding Gehenim like having a bad wife. So Iba Gehenim Shtoikra. So what the pasuk is saying, Kamara Ishara Shagehenim Shalabah. When you want to say how bad hell is, you're saying it's like having a bad wife. So that tells you how having a bad wife is like the worst thing to have. The Gemara says, Hinini maybe Rosh and Yochalotzis Memena. The pasuk is telling in Yirmiyah that God's saying, I'm going to bring something bad that you'll never get away from. If you have a bad wife and with a big ksuba, very hard to get out of that kind of marriage. I think Bill Gates has that problem. The Sasani Hashem Yodi will do one more minute. Sasani Hashem bidei loyochel kol. God will, in a curse, God will put you in somebody that you'll never be able to get up. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Ukva, Parchia Zu Isha Ra Uksubasa Beruba. That's talking about a woman it's a bad woman and has a big suba, and it's very difficult to get out of that mess. The Marava is saying that the pasuk in Eicha is referring to that somebody whose money is his food, he has only food. He doesn't have any other way to get food except with his own money, and sometimes not reliable because the price of food goes up and he has no income. So he's really stuck with that. Okay, we'll stop over here. There's a lot more to do to get to the bottom of the page, but we'll catch up Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. But a very fascinating Gemara that we learned. Wasn't all apples and lollipops and candy for the, we
Where
did.
did you close off?
What?
Where did you close off?
By Banecha, middle of the page. I could say like like 7 lines below the Hagoyas Habach, about 8 lines. It's called Benecha Benesecha Nesurin La'am Acher, Rav Chonon.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Baruch, why do you have a beard? Are you Nevelis?
No, we learned yesterday in the Gemara that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva died during this period between Pesach and Shavuos. So the Minig Ha'olam, it doesn't say in the Gemara anything about Noyeg Avelis, but the Minig became that people don't shave until Lag BaOmer.
I see. Very nice.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll continue more with these stories and things like that about the Tanaim and marriages.
Okay,